Hi, everybody. Just let people start to actually appear. Welcome to Studio TV. So excited today. Really important stuff we're going to be talking about. Some fantastic ladies have joined me for this conversation. I'm really grateful for that. Be brilliant if there's people there that are watching as you start to kind of drift in and arrive for this session. If you can see the comments box, we can type. If you can just say, confirm if you can hear us all right. That's always a really good thing to know. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button because you'll get lots more content on all sorts of stuff, including stuff on safeguarding from us here. So fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Great. Let's get started. So I'm really thrilled to be joined by Sharon Howard, Claire Humber, Esther Green, all from the Independent Safeguarding Hub, who as an organisation provide really high quality child protection and safeguarding assessment consultancy and training as well. They're made up of a team of independent social workers with loads of experience within the child protection and safeguarding sector. So this is a really great opportunity for us. So we're so grateful to you three for joining us. Thank you so much. Why don't you start by just introducing yourselves, tell us all maybe a little bit about yourselves, and then we can really get into it. But it'd be lovely just to hear a little bit more about yourselves individually and as an organisation.
Okay, do you want me to go first? Yeah. So I'm Esther Green. Currently, I'm an independent social worker, and I've got quite an eclectic kind of experience. I think we all have. We all come from quite different experiences. So I do training for professionals, including for teachers, multi-agency training in safeguarding. My background is I was a local authority social worker for many years.
Okay.
Working in child protection stuff, investigation. I also have quite a lot of experience of early years, having set up a day nursery company, and I also do kind of work with counsellors in terms of consultancy about safeguarding, and work in fostering. As I say, a jack of all trades, me, but I'm very passionate about safeguarding. It's something and child protection that I think links all of us together, which is part of the hub why we set it up in the first place, is to try to provide, as you said, that high quality kind of training and knowledge to give people confidence in safeguarding, really.
Yeah, that's lots of people struggle with that, don't they? So that's amazing. Yeah, thank you.
I'm up next. I'm Claire Humber. I first met Esther when we trained as social workers 18 years ago,
Something like that.
Quite a while ago now. Since then, I've been working mostly in frontline social work, as working with children looked after and child protection. I've done lots of assessment work and court work over the years, and recently trained in the first part of my family systemic therapy training. So keeping things different and fresh and learning all the time, but always coming back to good old safeguarding and keeping the centre of our thinking. So again, as Esther said, that is something that really links us all together in the Independent Safeguarding Hub.
How about you, Sharon?
Okay, I'm Sharon Howard. I'm also a qualified social worker. Began my career as a frontline social worker working in child protection, but in maybe the last decade or so, I'm a service manager for disabled children and young people services. So I work primarily in supporting children to remain at home, and I manage a team of social workers and occupational therapists. And we put in support packages, but we also make sure that children are safe in relation to safeguarding, and we have looked after children as well that we make sure that their care plan is correct for them. I'm a best interest assessor, so I am able to work with people who lack capacity, and some people from 16 lack capacity to make decisions for themselves. And I also offer independent supervision to a head of safeguarding in a special school.
Wow, that's amazing. There's so many different kind of branches to the whole thing, isn't there? But and the breadth of experience there is amazing. So again, thank you so much for this. I think one, from our point of view, we obviously work with schools and we do quite specific stuff, but we've kind of branched out and started talking about loads of different things. And one of the things that I'm asked lots about in conversations I have with schools all over the country is around safeguarding. Now, my particular bent is around how that works from an online point of view and a compliance point of view. But one of the things which is why we started talking in the first place, was how and what a big issue it is within schools, how the landscape is changing all the time, how things are popping up and becoming rightly so and more significant issues. How do you see the landscape is at the moment in terms of safeguarding, and what are some of the kind of the issues that you're aware of that are popping up time and time again?
Well, we've talked about this actually. We've talked about, because we've been around a bit, the real and really our kind of, I guess, sympathy with people working in schools, with teachers in particular, because it has, as you said, the landscape's changed massively. And I think in the old days, if you like, it was hard enough because there were all the issues, the usual safeguarding issues. So, I mean, in terms of child protection, worries about children, and usually their care in the home. So things like domestic abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, the kind of standard, if you like kind of safeguarding child protection issues. And now in recent times, as well as, so those issues continue, there's concerns all the time about children who are being neglected, emotional neglect. But on top of that, teachers in particular, in schools in particular, are finding like it's safeguarding issues of the day, if you like. So other issues that are compounding that kind of stuff, and also where the danger might not necessarily be coming from someone they know. So we have things like online stuff, which is huge. So issues about social media, mobile phones, issues of abuse from peer-to-peer abuse, which is really something I think in the last couple of years. People use phrases, don't they? And peer-on-peer abuse, I think, is something, in my experience, of teachers I've spoken to, is something that's opened up a whole other kind of can of worms, if you like. Something else to add to their workload, something else that they feel that they've got responsibility in dealing with.
And it maybe feel a complexity about it.
Yeah,
So actually, when you unravel it, it's not as complex as it might sound. We've also the other issues that are around child sexual exploitation, which again is a very complex issue. But once you start to unravel it and see what it is that you need to do as schools and as teachers to make sure that children are safe, there's quite a clear pathway to it. So what we want to do really is try and help to demystify some of the child protection work that you're doing and the safeguarding work that you're doing. Sorry, and you were going to say something.
No, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I mean, again, I'm coming at it from such a different bent, but what's fascinating is to go, actually, no matter what we're talking about, the pressure on those working in schools is vast, and something like the additional layers around safeguarding that comes up all the time is it's all obviously critical stuff. But again, schools are obviously a lot of the time on the front line of being school staff expected to actually meet the needs of those kids, those children.
And I think that landscape is shifting all the time now as well, and that landscape is kind of set by the children. So with new apps on phones, they can be quite often ahead. So I think as for anyone working in safeguarding, trying to always stay 2 steps ahead know. And with that also, you're getting lots of guidance, lots of information about it. You're being told all the time that you've got to read this, you've got to read that, you've got to know about this. I think puts huge pressure on people, anyone who's working with children, to worry that, and to lose confidence, I think, in dealing with issues that they're probably very capable of dealing with, but feel like they're not capable of because they don't know. And I think that's something that we find quite a lot is that anxiety, that level of anxiety, that there's always something that they should have done, people feel they should have done, or whatever. Because we've talked about social media, we talked about mobile phones. There's also like radicalization is something, another issue, substance misuse, county lines, self-harming. And these are things that I'm sure working in a secondary school in particular, you're probably dealing with now, day in, day out. And I imagine, and I know I hear it quite a lot, that lots of teachers feel like they're doing the social work. So I think that's something, not only about them, teachers having support in dealing with, but also in terms of accessing supervision for their own well-being, and own, because they're dealing with quite complex stuff. I think that maybe a few years ago teachers weren't expected to deal with quite so much.
Well, and often they're also doing their own meetings in school. And one of the things we were very much talking about earlier was, which kind of leads on from what Esther was saying, is there is so much around now, and that creates a difficulty in actually getting referrals into children's services. So there might become a point where people think, actually, this doesn't meet the threshold for referring in as a safeguarding concern. And we were sort of talking about thresholds, particularly in relation to children's services and how those have changed over the years. And I'm sure it feels the same in a school context as well, because we're inundated with worries about our children. And our kind of advice really is, even if you've not succeeded before, to always try if you genuinely feel there is a safeguarding concern about a child.
I think that's right, Claire. And the most important thing to remember when you're making a referral regarding a child and safeguarding incident is it's best not to talk generically about the child. What the best approach would be, from my point of view, is being really clear about what you're worried about for that child, and what the risks are. So there's something called signs of safety. Some of you may have heard of. It's a particular model of working. And one of the questions is what we're worried about. So if you can actually get that down on paper, what you're worried about and what you think the outcomes will be for the child, what the risks are for the child, then that will, when the information and referral goes into front door, that will really clarify for the social workers working at front door what it is that they need to do. So be as specific as you can.
I think we said about sometimes people think, what we're saying, I've referred this to social services like 4 times. They don't ever take it as a referral. So it's just another incident. I'm just going to record it. And because they won't do anything, so I won't make that referral. And I think that's when it's dangerous ground, because it's putting it on your own head. Yeah. Whereas actually making that referral, letting the social services decide whether or not it meets their criteria is much more the sensible way to go. But I can completely understand why that happens, and that is because of this massive, there's such a huge amount of referrals coming in. They are being, sometimes it feels like they're being batted away, but actually the quality of the information you give, as Sharon said, and not giving up. But I can, I completely understand the soul destroying, doing a referral, telling a child that you're making a referral and nothing happening, which is the opposite to what I guess people used to be worried about, that you'd make a referral to social services and there'd be blue flashing lights. Yes, when nothing happens, as teachers sitting, it must be really awful. So but that doesn't mean that you change your practice. The law stays the same, the guidance stays the same, your school procedures still stay the same. So it's about, I don't want to say covering yourself, but I guess it is a lot as well, about covering yourself to an extent, and also making sure that the child and the child's welfare is paramount. Yes.
And keeping children safe in education. It was revised in September 2019. And that is just the most fantastic document. We have one prepared earlier. It covers so many aspects of what we're talking about and much more. And if ever you need to just clarify something, obviously you talk to your designated safeguarding lead, who will know the policies and procedures for your particular setting. But that is a definitely go-to document for us, and we'd recommend it for you. Yeah.
That's really good advice. That, yeah, really helpful. That stuff about actually write it down, people, if you're watching that, because that's really good advice. That's a great document, absolutely. But actually, like you say, Sharon, writing down stuff and just recording stuff is such a critical part of the whole thing, isn't it? So,
but it is also doing something with that. Would just add that, because I do hear that quite a lot in schools. We've recorded it, so always think, why have I recorded that? Because if you've just recorded it for the sake of it, it's going nowhere. It's just staying on file. So yes, record it, but also do something about it as well. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think there's certain duties that teachers have upon them that are really important to know about. And one, FGM, which is female
genital mutilation.
Genital mutilation. I'm dyslexic. I can never get acronyms out. Now, there is actually a duty on teachers to report if they suspect that a child who's under 18 has actually experienced that form of abuse, that teachers have a direct duty to report to the police. Now, obviously, you'd want to speak to your designated safeguarding lead, but they're the kind of things that you really need to know about, because that is written in law, and it's a particular duty for teachers. So I think in terms of other,
we were thinking in general terms about what teachers might want to hear about and sort of have our advice on. And just to say, we're all parents of school-age children ourselves. And one of the things we were thinking about was, working with parents around safeguarding issues and how that might feel as a teacher, and situations, for example, where a child might make a disclosure and how that might be managed. And, thinking about some of our best tips really for those situations. We've kind of got a bit of a list together really, and we were talking amongst ourselves earlier and thinking some of those disclosures can be very spontaneous, and in which case you have to deal with it in the moment. And our best advice really is to really listen to that child and take it very seriously. I mean, it goes without saying, but as Esther touched on earlier, there can be a lot of anxiety around safeguarding and children telling you something, and it's just putting these simple things into practice can really help. The other thing we think children really need to know from the outset, if they are making a disclosure or they've come to you and said, I want to speak to you about something, is to be very clear that you aren't able to keep secrets, and that you may need to share this information with somebody else. What other tips did we have?
I just think about never ask why.
Oh yeah.
And we had this conversation where I've seen it happen so many times. A child discloses, say for example, my dad hit me this morning, and the instant reaction is to say why, and a child would say, well, I don't know, because I'm naughty, and it puts that blame on that child. So really about open-ended questions, using the same language a child uses, never putting words in their mouths. So just repeat what they say, and that's kind of like a a go-to safety net. Just keep repeating what they're saying, and they will keep elaborating on it, reassuring them, but not cross-examining them, but clarifying stuff. So I think sometimes if a child makes a disclosure, you could panic and go, okay, I'll stop you there, and then go off. But actually, you can take your time, and you can think. You can even say, you get on really well with Mrs. McDonald, should we go and get her, and then we can talk about this together? So you have someone else who's there, which can be quite helpful. You can just clarify with them, if you can, a timeline, so you could find out whether the incident was yesterday or a year ago, because that might be quite helpful. Something else we were talking about is if they disclose that they've, say, for example, said, my mum hit me, for establishing whether there's an injury or not is really important. And sometimes we're terrified of doing that. If that's obviously in a dodgy location, you need to not do that. But, you know, be common sense, let common sense prevail. That's a good, don't panic. And afterwards, don't just write down what the child said, write down what you said as well, because that is really important, because you don't want to, you need to evidence that you didn't lead them, that kind of thing.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because Esther has said all of that and outlined exactly what you need to do. But there is a caveat there, because we mustn't lead children. You mustn't put information into their mouths or lead them to say something that they were not going to say. So, you know, everything Esther has said is absolutely on the button. So, you know, just be mindful of all of that, but not leading. Okay.
Yeah.
And going back to the sort of issue around working with the child's parents as well, it's really important to tell parents what is going on for the child, unless you think it's too dangerous, and that would only be in very, very rare situations, in which case you would phone children's services.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the person that I'm currently supervising, she's a safeguarding lead for a special school I was mentioning earlier. She had a situation last week where a referral was made by a member of health, but the family were told that it was school who made the referral, and it was about a child protection issue. And the designated lead, she was furious, because she'd had a good relationship with the family, and she felt that, you know, if she had made that referral to social services, she would have told the family herself, and she made that very clear with the family when she had to try and unravel the relationship. So the key is, you know, it's really important to have a good relationship with families. It's really important to maintain that relationship, but that's based on honesty, and that's how you maintain it, isn't it? Through being really honest and upfront. The only occasions when you don't do that is when you know that by giving that information to the parents, the child is at imminent risk. So, you know, I think that's how we would. And
that would always be something you discuss with your designated safeguarding lead or social services. If in doubt, consult. Always.
Wow, there's so much information. That's so helpful. There's lots to take away, isn't there? I think if we've kind of explored lots of different things within there, and of course people will be able to kind of come back and watch this again. I've found, I said this to somebody, I listened to a podcast a couple of days ago, and actually I re-listened to the whole thing, because there were so many things in there I just wanted to scribble down. So thank you. So there's loads in there. I mean, one of the things that I was keen to ask was, you know, for those watching, we have kind of talked through lots of things that folks could actually go and do. If there was, you know, somebody who was facing a particular issue right now, what would be your golden piece of actionable advice that somebody could take away now, if they're facing an issue, that they would, or even if that's something that is quite broad as a concept to apply to how they do it, what would each of you say to that person that they could go away and maybe start to get a handle on a situation?
Yeah, we were sort of thinking about this earlier in general terms, really, and we keep coming back to the kind of issue of safeguarding is safeguarding. It doesn't matter what it is. there's very clear procedures to follow and very clear kind of guidance and support that can be given. So regardless of whether it's FGM or domestic abuse or, you know, all the other things we've spoken about today, it needs to be approached in the same way, really. And, you know, we're all very passionate about children, and they have to be our kind of first thought in any of the actions that we take, and, you know, to be really child-centered and, you know, really think about the impact on the child. So, I mean, that would be my...
And I think in schools, there is a perk to being in a school and in safeguarding, and that is that your responsibility, and they are listed. I mean, what we're talking about, keeping children safe in education, it really is. I love it because it's really straightforward and it suits my brain.
Yeah, mine too.
But it even lists in there what your responsibilities are as a member of staff in a school or a college. And your duty is like primarily, obviously, to make sure the child is not at immediate risk, but to tell your designated safeguarding need. And you have a designated safeguarding need who has a job description and has a role specifically to safeguard children. So once you've told that person, so, you know, when you go home worrying about things, carrying on the shoulder, just don't do that. Offload it onto, you know, and the designated safeguarding need can talk with you about it, and you share that. And the moment you've shared your concerns, it makes it something a bit more manageable to deal with. Because, and I think you talked about the signs of safety stuff, didn't you, Sharon? Something I love about that is what am I worried about? Sit down, because sometimes I think the really high-end safeguarding stuff where a child's at immediate risk is weirdly quite straightforward in that kind of, you meet the criteria, you're off.
Yeah, that's true.
But those kind of, and I think for teachers, day in, day out, dealing with that kind of, is it good enough or not-ish kind of stuff, to sit down or to sit with your designated safeguarding need and say, what are we worried about? And it's so simple, but what exactly are we worried about? What's going fine here? And talking it through, and then making a decision based on that. So I would always say, you know, talk to your designated safeguarding needs, share your concerns, and think about, you know, you've got procedures clearly in place for your school, and follow those, and document stuff.
Yeah.
As you go.
Yeah, and I think just a slight add-on is, if you can read and understand signs and symptoms of abuse, you know, the multifaceted aspects of it, but the main ones that you'll hear about are neglect, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse. If you can know and understand what that actually means in real life, that will really help you too.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. What about those people now then who are maybe thinking, how do I go a little bit deeper? You've given us so much helpful information, so much actionable stuff that I can take away and implement in my setting. What if what do you have available for us if I'm looking to go deeper into looking at safeguarding in schools in my setting?
Okay. Well, we put this. We've got a course that we've put together. We've had to do safeguarding training like everyone for years.
many years.
And the online safeguarding training, we personally found quite soulless. It was either like cartoons, kind of robotic
sounding
voices. It didn't relate to our work that we were doing. You know, it was a generic kind of work, but not really that personal. So we've put together a training course specifically for people working in schools and colleges. It's us, I'm afraid, in
That's the apology I always make. My face.
We're talking about real life scenarios. So providing all the boring information, because we have to do that as well. But also, so there's different chapters on different things. We include a whole chapter on safeguarding issues of the day that we've talked about. So to try and reassure you, but to also give confidence in what you're doing, that you're doing a great job, and that actually, if you don't know where to look for what you need to do, we can point you in the right direction. We can look at the scenarios that you might face, as I said.
Yeah, we've got case studies in there. And we've used the relevant and up-to-date legislation to really guide you through what you need to know. So what we've done is, in many ways, is taken that document, and we've tried to make it more accessible, so that you don't have to wade through it in the way, for some people reading and reading through documents and policies is fine, but for others it's actually really good to put it into context, and to look at a case study. There's a really good piece in there, Kaylee's Love Story, isn't there, which is about child sexual exploitation, which is obviously distressing, but it shows you how to deal with those kind of situations. So we have that great, if I say so myself, we have the great training course available to you online, but we also have consultation. We do independent training as well, so if you wanted us to come out and speak with you or speak with your school, we'd be interested to hear from you with regard to that too.
And in terms of the training, what we've tried to do is, everyone has different roles, I think, in school. So you would have like a newly qualified teacher, somebody that's volunteering in a school, a designated safeguarding lead, or a head teacher. Our training, we've tried our best to make it eclectic, so it meets all of your needs, so that it's just as valuable for a newly qualified teacher as it is for someone who's been working for years in the field. And we because we appreciate, like, time is precious, and it's and budgets are precious as well. So this is training that meets the aim. It's helpful in all those ways. So it's not like overly overpriced. It's not for particular people. It's for everybody. It's generic, but it's helpful. It gives you places. So if you want to look more in depth, so the designated safeguarding lead can do the course, go away and find out more information in different areas, and do other training on top of that as well. So we've tried to make it, because we know what it's like. We've been around, as I say.
And there's activities, isn't there, on it to kind of break it up and get you thinking a bit. And there's also, at the end, there's of each chapter there's a quiz, so it just helps you to refresh. And
to try and make it interesting and relevant to so that it's not that kind of online training that we've talked about. We want it to be quite different, quite quirky, but something you remember. And useful.
It's I've got it up there so people can have a little kind of preview of what's in there. It is fantastic. There's so much information in there. I mean, one of the reasons we started Studio TV and started putting this kind of stuff together for Studio and the other partners that we work with was the time burden on people within school and the cost of going out to access training, or the cost potentially to get people in. Now, it really, actually, what my favorite thing about the whole concept is I can do this whenever I want to. I can do this wherever I am on any device. I can dip in and out to the bits as I need to refresh myself on the things I need to. So it is really great. I mean, thank you so much for doing this, guys. What Sharon, Claire and Esther have done, have partnered with us to create this course that's on Studio TV. So that is available online, and we'll put some links up as part of the feeds here, so that anybody who's interested in that can see them. But it does, as we say, kind of cover all the different elements that we've talked about and go into so much depth. And it's really obvious to me from just chatting with you for a short period of time. I know we've spoken quite a bit beforehand, but from chatting with you, there's so much breadth and depth of knowledge. And what our passion is at Studio TV is to make that passion and that knowledge accessible to people within schools who are desperate for that knowledge. They really want that knowledge, but it's so hard to access. People know this. Our story is our youngest has Down syndrome, and before he started school, we went to the Down Syndrome Association in London for training, and said to school, "You need to get the Down Syndrome Association up here. Come and do this training for his teacher and his 2 TAs." And they said, "You've pretty much just blown half my CPD budget for the whole year." So that's why we're so passionate about this as a concept. And so I'm personally hugely thankful to you for all the work you've done to put together something that is an amazing resource for schools, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So yeah, really exciting on that one. As I say, we'll put links within the kind of the content here, so alongside this video, so people can access that stuff. How would people get in touch with you if they wanted to have a conversation with you direct about anything they might be facing, or if they wanted to access any kind of consultancy stuff? Where would you point them?
Go to our website, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah. So so independentsafeguardinghub.com.
Let's have a little look, shall we? Okay, we're flying by the seat of our pants now, but let's have a little look. Find it.
Let's see if it comes up.
Is it going to go? Yay! Phew.
Fab. So what's that? That's independentsafeguardinghub.com. There we go.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you so much again, Sharon, Claire, Esther, for joining me today. I know that people will have found that incredibly valuable and hugely useful. And yeah, again, I'm so grateful. You guys do a wonderful thing, and I just want to celebrate what you do as much as having a chat about things as well. So thank you for taking the time to chat to me. Is there any final thoughts? Anything you want to share before we go? Before we say bye to everybody?
No, it's just lovely to have the opportunity to speak to you.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us.
Yeah, we could go on all day.
Yeah, but we won't.
No, honestly, it's such a privilege to chat to you. Such a pleasure as well. So thank you so much. We'll sign off now, and again, I will put those links so that people can get access to stuff they need to. And yeah, once again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ian. Bye, everyone.
Bye.